Because all over the world, we will find structures and objects, and even parts of cultures, and timing for eclipse. And we have to ask ourselves, how and why? These are questions we have to ask. And when we don't know, the common assumption or assertion is that extraterrestrials must play a significant role. I will not just simply be putting forth speculations to pose as a quandary for the working mind. So by default, we have to accept that it has to do with extraterrestrial influence. I'm going to dig a lot deeper, and I'm going to show you. And my persuasion will be empirical data. I'm going to show you that it is evident that beings of higher intelligence from other planets have in some cases imposed their will on the human race, and in other cases shared information. And I know this is I'm putting myself out there to even say that I'm going to show you and prove these things to you. But that's what's going to make this thing very exciting. So I don't want to consume too much of the time, because I want to go back and forth and hear what my brother has to say. But I definitely want to speak on extraterrestrials and every facet.
2 minutes you can go in.
Okay, I didn't even know I was being timed again. I definitely want to speak on extraterrestrials in every facet of the term. I wanted to speak on them visiting the planet. And we made mention to the Nile Valley, the Dogons. And I also have to put on the table and want it on the table the Sumerians. We're going to write up the things we need each other to address. This is going to be the type of debate you're going to see. We're going to have points that we have to address in the first round and points we have to address in the second round. So that way you don't hear two rounds that sound like neither one of us know what the point is, just because of the title of the event. This title of the event is going to be all-encompassing of several bullet points that we have to address per round. So that way we can effectively rebuttal what each other is saying. So that way I don't come in with my PowerPoint presentation. He comes in with his PowerPoint presentation. These things are both good. One is good, one is bad, both are bad. But people are like, yo, they're not even responding. I don't want to come out saying he's not responding to what I'm saying, and you come out saying he's not responding to what I'm saying. We're going to have bullet point presentations for things that we must address. There can be surprises, all we want to do. But it's going to be bullet points. So that way, fairly, you can have an idea of what needs to be addressed, and you can properly rebut it, and I can have an idea fairly of what you want to address. We should not be so insecure as scholars as to not let each other know these are the points of interest that we need to be addressed. That has nothing to do with the mechanics of your presentation. So this is what we're going to do to tighten it up for the debate. So he's made mention of the Nile Valley, the Dogon, and I have a personal interest in Sumeria. Our arguments, I would suggest, don't have to be limited to, but of course we have a personal interest, that in which case we want to divulge into subject matter pertaining especially to the Nile River Valley, to the Dogon. Because I know personally that the Dogon, I might wait. There's 25 seconds left. I will fall back, and if he don't take the mic, I'm gonna run around the table. You can stop that right now.
All right, brother.
That's it. I'm running.
Peace, brother. Brother Shaka, you got the floor, brother.
Okay, thank you. All right. The first thing, well explicated, my brother.
Thanks, brother.
You were using such words that were so big, I was wondering if I could keep up.
Come on, cut it out. You're the king.
Different the first word that's important, I want to touch on the series of words. And the reason why this is important is because I'm of the opinion, I always tell black people that the greatest thing that you can ever do for yourself is to expand your vocabulary. And you don't have to learn big words to expand your vocabulary. You just have to, you should add more words to your vocabulary. But it's also a question of paying attention to what words are being used in order for you to understand what may or may not be afoot and what may or may not be going on. And so that's very important, because sometimes even the person who hypothetically may be guilty of any transgression, they themselves may not be aware of what they may or may not in fact be doing. And so that's why it's important to pay attention to words. One of the things that I noticed as I was listening to my Taneb as he was talking, I kept counting. First I was getting upset because I'm not a fast writer, and so I said, you know what? Rather than try to write out notes on everything that he's saying, write what sticks out to you the most concerning what he was saying, and then address that. And I think that will help people understand where I am on the whole extraterrestrial thing. The first thing I want you to know is that when I'm talking about extraterrestrial, and I think that Brother Polite would even concur, is that when we're talking about extraterrestrial, we're talking about it in the conventional means. And the key word when you're talking about extraterrestrial in the conventional means is the term sentient. It's a very important word. We're talking about a sentient being.
That's right.
A person who is psychologically responsible for their own actions, and who can determine, who can consciously determine the course of actions or the course of events. And so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about extraterrestrials. People who are in control of their own faculty. They didn't fall here by accident, because that then would be a meteor. But even a meteor doesn't come to Earth by accident. It's on a trajectory, because there's really nothing in the universe that happens by accident, if you understand the theory of relativity and physics and how it all works. And so, but when we're talking about extraterrestrial, we're certainly talking about sentient beings, okay? And so I want us to be clear on that. Now, more important than that, what I want you to pay attention to is what I noticed as Brother Polite was speaking. The one thing that stood out above any and all other things as he was speaking was he used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He used 6 words repetitively, and he used them over and over and over and over again. And for me, this sums up the substance of his argument for, or his premise for this sums up the argument for his premise of extraterrestrialism with respect to ancient civilizations. He used these 6 words over and over and over again. He continually used may. He continually used might. He continually used would. He continually used if. He continually used suggest, and he continually used could. None of these words are a premise for fact. None of them. They all fall in the realm of the B word. And that all sums up, those 6 words that he used, when you add them all together, they result in what we call belief. Therefore, even though at the outset we sought to keep religion out of the dialogue, by virtue of delving into belief, we are back at the doorstep of religion. Only this time, instead of the deity being a dead white homosexual man hanging from a cross, it is now a speculative, imaginary, sentient being for which we have no evidence. Okay? No direct evidence, or anything that would qualify as evidence for myself that I have yet to encounter. Knowing my Seneb, my Brother Polite, I have no doubt in my mind that he will go to biology, dealing with DNA. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. I have no doubt in my mind that he will go to text, and that he will use what I call pop scholarship, popular scholarship that is out there today. I might have a little bit of an edge. I'm pretty sure it's Galileo. I'm not sure. It might be the Rosetta, the Rosetta satellite. But it's a satellite that was sent out. I have to get my facts straight. I should have my facts straight before I even speak on this. But the bottom line is that she worked on a project that sent out into space a probe or a satellite that was in possession of a recording of every language on Earth and other types of languages. I think that dealt with algorithms and other things. I haven't done enough research on it, so I really should not even be speaking on it. But just knowing that this relative of mine has worked on this and has had such extensive experience with the goings-ons of deep space. In other words, what might be out there, what we have made contact with, what we haven't made contact with. I would like to believe that if there was anything of any note I would have heard it through the family grapevine at some point in a passing. Though that has not occurred, I mean, who am I? I don't have any top clearance that would allow me to hear something like that if she was in possession of that kind of information. But just having someone like that so close to home, so to speak, it just gives me food for thought. You know, that someone who is so sincerely interested in what's going on out in space and what might be on other planets, I'm sure that I think that if that kind of contact had been made, the search itself would take on a different kind of nature. You understand what I'm saying? So that's just my own perspective and my own opinion. But again, oh, thank you very much. This is water from the House of Consciousness. So if Polite and I drink this and something happens, y'all know where to come. Hotel. And that's that.
You got a minute left, brother.
Tefnu. Thank you very much. Tefnu is liquid. So therefore, with my last minute, again, I want to reiterate. The majority, I want you to pay attention to that. It's very important. The words, the 6 words that my adversary in this particular debate continually uses are words pertaining to belief and belief only. And never forget, when you are dealing with belief, when you break down the word, it comes from the root word belie. The word belie means to give a false notion of, to deceive by lying. That's what the word believe means. So when you are dealing with belief, you are engaging in the exercise of lying to yourself. And so, because, and I'm not saying that he's lying to himself, what I am saying is that because he uses these words, may, might, would, if, suggested, could, he's engaging in the exercise of belief and leading you to do the same. So that's just my perspective. Wait a minute, they get shake, I get no shake, all I get is water.
No, that's shake right there.
Here you go.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm like, wait a minute, my last name is, what's your last name, Polite? My last name is Polite, you know. There you go.
Yo.
My last name is Covenant.
Okay, ready? This getting intense now.
Well, not
Go ahead, Polite. It's on you.
Alright, so let's do it like this. Let's go to them 6 words that I use in regards to what you were saying.
Right.
The only reason I use those 6 words because I was speaking in the introspection of the party that I'm in dialogue with. Meaning, when I was speaking and using those words, it was in a hypothetical context precipitated by the likes of which the person that I am in dialogue with. Okay, entertained it as such. So what I mean by this is, he said, I'm not going to say that they didn't come to the planet, and I didn't say that they did. I'm not going to say this, and I'm not going to say that. Right. So when I was speaking in the context of him hypothesizing on if such an actuality exists, which he was neither here or there. So in the framework or the chassis of his argument, I could not specifically put into any mold what exactly he was talking about because he wasn't even exact or precise and whether he's taking a stance on extraterrestrials or not. So those 6 words are beholden to him as I am trying to probe his mind to find out what exactly is he talking about. If you play the video back, you'll understand what I mean, because when you play the video back, you'll hear me say a key word, which he should have wrote down. And that key word is empirical. One of the things I said was I'm going to see to it that I bring empirical data. And I also said that I am not so in search of an identity that in my insecurities as a black man or part of the black race, purportedly black, that I will not use mere speculations to cater to my ego and fulfill my goals as it corresponds with my insecurities to find my place in the world because of the wonders that have been created, the phenomena that have been created world over. I said I will not just take the credit of something merely because I am black and I think I'm great. Paraphrasing. If you go back, you'll understand that I said I will not use speculation as my catalyst to which end I would establish myself and my identity in this world, as to not accredit an intelligent race or superior race of beings for the works that they have done. That's one. And the two is empirical data. Those are key words. Because just by saying the word empirical in itself, you know that I will not come with this feigned argument of if this, if that, believe this, believe that. So the religiosity actually was imbued into our psyches by way of the deliverance of my brother here. But I'm sure it wasn't done on purpose. And when we go to the debate, I know he's going to really put it into context. He said that he has a family member that works for NASA. He has to get the spelling of the name right or something was going on. Whatever the case was, he's going to get it right at the debate. But what Polight is going to give you right now is 4 letters. It's an acronym. Sounds like an Egyptian being. SETI. NASA has a program called SETI. The acronym is Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Mm-hmm. NASA have a program called SETI.
Search.
You didn't know that?
Yes, I do.
For
I wanted to say it
extraterrestrial.
again.
Yeah.
Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Yes.
The United Nations also has a contract over certain acres of land in space via the moon, Venus, and Mars. In the event that extraterrestrial life forms try to claim right to the property, they claim right to the property first. So no extraterrestrial life can seize it. We're going to go into these things. We're going to ask, why are these intelligent scientists creating these type of things? I'm going to reveal the document at the debate. Hold me to it. But if you're a reader of my books, you can peel through 84 plus of my books and hopefully you come across it. Don't just read the excerpts on my website. So, SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The United Nations has a document that's claiming land before extraterrestrials try to claim it outside of space. And certainly there's a platform for extraterrestrial involvement in our lives. The Dogon tribe is very important. The Dogon tribe, they have identified Digitaria, Sirius B, Bro.Polight, the Dogons. With what? I know Ivan Van Sertima has found a piece of glass and say, you see? Not extraterrestrials. And it looked like something probably for a microscope or something like that.
Spherical lenses. The Russian scientists found it and they turned Van Sertima onto it.
Okay, what was it used for?
Spherical lenses. The presumption is for telescopes.
Okay, and did they specify?
Stargazing.
Did they specify what type of telescopes? Because I just want to say that within the last 100 years, we just found out the Dogons were right. So it wasn't our type of technology that we can use to find something that is leaning towards the 19th galaxy, on the cusp of the 18th and 19th galaxy. So the specification that I need is that that lens was actually able to be used to find something that man just most recently found as of inside of the last 100 years. If that not be the case, the number one question is, for a community that built most things primarily out of stone, sand, rocks, communities that use papyrus, communities that use clay tablets, where did the knowledge come from to find planets that exist far beyond our solar system, far beyond our galaxy, actually on the cusp of the 19th galaxy and 18th? Did they just have better eyesight than our people? Did they have objective lens in their eyes where they can manipulate the cones in their eyes and be able to adjust it and see things from afar? We have found information that they left back for us, none of which are how to build a telescope though. We found a lot of information. We found a lot of stuff about medicine and honey from the Egyptians and everything. They left things on the wall. But we didn't get the information on how the hell did you see those planets. We didn't find the technology that you left over either, but you left us some amazing technology. We trying to figure out what did you use to build it. Now you will find the ifs, the maybes, the probablys from him when the questions are posed. How did we build those pyramids? When I go into the specifics of what it takes to build a pyramid, what kind of technology, what we must do with granite, what we must do with lodestone, the fact that it's piezoelectric, and why would it have to be piezoelectric, meaning when you compress something in an intense fashion, one of several things is going to take place. Okay? One is that you're going to establish levity. Okay? When you're dealing with that which is piezoelectric, like you're dealing with granite, and you're dealing with lodestone, when you're dealing with these materials, when you intensify pressure on it, it produces an electromagnetic field because it's piezoelectric, and in turn it establishes what's called levity. Why is this important? You ever see skyscrapers and hollow train stations? You know, the train stations, underground train stations, represent a hollow world. Okay, hollow world. This is a stone called mobile as well that complies with the same ideology. The underground train station is hollow. How come the skyscrapers don't fall into the hollow train stations? Well, when you use certain stones and you apply pressure to it, the very opposite of gravity takes place, which is levity. And it compels the stones to go upward. But we are not talking about no light stones for no Twin Towers here. We're talking about them thousands of pounds of stones for the pyramids.
One more time, brother. You said
the Hebrew Israelites contend that they were used to build the pyramids through their slavery, being enslaved by the Egyptians. Yet very few of them could put up sheetrock today. Very few of them can build a roof that will not be impeded upon from the worst weather that we've ever been subjected to the lightest weather we've ever been subjected to. It will still leak. The pyramids don't have leaks. The people who contend that they were enslaved to build the pyramids have yet to reveal these idiosyncrasies. The people that confide in ancient Egypt and say no one helped us, we did it ourselves, have yet to bring back the information that we need desperately to find out about ourselves, our identities, and our kind. So speculation will not come from me when I put forth questions about things that have yet to be explored because we took credit for it prematurely before we truly investigated how we were able to implement such a methodology in the first place. How would we be able to employ this? Question.
Time.
Okay.
Come on, you know I know. I never
We're
run out.
about to go in too for like.
May I?
Yeah. Oh, Shaka. Wait. Go ahead, Shaka. What do you think about what the brother said, Shaka? I ain't stopped your time yet.
Well, I think what he said.
Yeah.
This is what I think about what he said.
You want me to start now?
I just figured I'd give
Your time is on, brother. Go ahead. Go in.
That was for like I knew you. Yeah, I have a little fun here. Okay, I had to take a little jab at my brother. The first, okay, in respect to what he said earlier, he said that the reason he was using those 6 words, may, if, and, but all those words that dealt with belief, what I call the belief group, was because I didn't take a stance. And that was a false statement. I did, in fact, take a stance. What I said was, I'm not going to say that planet Earth has never been visited by extraterrestrials. I said I would not say that. I cannot prove that they did. I cannot prove that they did not. However, what I did take a stance on, which was more pertinent, was that extraterrestrial intervention was not a feature in the creation of Nile Valley civilization. That was the stance that I took, and I took it explicitly. So that basically nullifies his statement that I took no stance. I did take a stance. He said that the reason why the reason why I said that he used the terms, he was using hypothetical terms such as could, would, if, and maybe, and so forth and so on. The reason why he said he used those words because of what I had said, because I had taken those stance. I've already proven that I did take a stance. What he continually says is what he will be doing, and what he would be doing, and what he will be doing. Well, to me, that's, at this point and now, that's rather, it's kind of unfair to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because just for the spirit of debate, it's rather religious because it reminds me of religious people who say Jesus will come back. And in other words, you don't have to prove what your will going to do. You understand what I'm saying? You don't have to prove that. Right? As of this point in time, you have not. And so, at this point in time, you have not, and I'll leave that there. You haven't. And so it's still in the realm of belief until you pull it out that realm. Okay? So, my side of the stadium is the side that's shining at the moment, because I've made no statements that I have to prove in the future. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. It's not as a I don't say it in a pejorative way. I'm just saying, you know, a matter of factly. That's nothing to do with that has nothing to do with the words that he used. What I said had nothing to do with those 6 words that he used. The 6 words that he used, let me go back to them. What I said they were that leave you in the realm of belief. He kept saying may, kept saying might, kept saying would, kept saying if, keep saying suggest. The fact that you have to say suggest tells me that you're using suggestive language. You don't have to use suggestive language to prove facts. You understand what I'm saying? When you're speaking about things pertaining to facts, you use fact language, fact-filled language. You understand what I'm saying? So the whole extraterrestrial thing, again, is again something else I think is very important that we need to look at. Being that we're talking about origins, one of the first things that we should question is who came up with the origin of the idea that the pyramids were built by aliens, by extraterrestrials. Was that an African concept? Did that come from our ancestors? That's very important. That's very important. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, it's very easy to read something and interpret it that way. I'm really not interested in someone's interpretation, because people are known for reading into something that is not there. They do it with the Bible all the time. You give somebody the Bible, and that's what they do every Sunday in church. That's religion. Well, my interpretation is this. Well, Pastor so-and-so, what's your interpretation? Well, Deacon so-and-so, what's your interpretation? And I think it's unfair if we take that same mentality and apply it to the writings of our ancestors. Because I personally don't believe that our ancestors wrote that way. I don't think they thought that way. I think that, although I don't think that they were so dogmatic that they did not leave room for a variety of explanation for things, I think that the language of the hieroglyphics of Medu Neter is fluid enough that there can be a variety of explanations for each particular writing. And that's what makes it beautiful. But there's always going to be, and this is what makes it very special, there's always going to be one essential truth shining from what is being said, or that can be called from what is being said in the ancient Egyptian language. And that is very, very important. It's very, very important. So again, the origin of the idea that Nile Valley civilization was interfered with, was inspired by, or was assisted by extraterrestrial intervention. Where does the origin of that idea come from? If it comes from the very same people who enslaved us, then we have to question it seriously. If it comes from the very same people who would seek to deny our ancestors their due credit with respect to the civilizations that they built, then that has to be addressed. If you cannot go into the text and show explicitly where our ancestors said that, in the pyramid text, in the coffin text, in the Petit Imheru, if it cannot be attested to, and I'm not talking about in one spot, because something of that phenomena would not be attested to in just one particular spot. It would be a stark feature within the text. You understand what I'm saying? And then you're going to have to, for myself at least, for it to be a credible premise, you're going to have to give me the people who are the best in the language who can attest to it and say, yeah, that's what it says. You understand what I'm saying? I personally know who those people are. And so I would certainly have no problem with consulting with them, because I myself, I'm not proficient in the language of Medu Neter hieroglyphics. I understand some of the rules of the language. I understand some of the protocols of the language. And I'm beginning my classes actually in a few weeks. And so hopefully by this time next year, I will be able to speak at length on that. But with respect to all of the translations that have been rendered in English, the various varied multiple translations of various varied multiple texts, of which I have read bar none, all of them, with respect to this particular subject matter, their cosmological and cosmogonical worldview, I see no room for extraterrestrial intervention as it was spoken of previously by both my illustrious brother and myself. And by nature, I think by our very natures, we're going to respond to the things that one another says. I don't think we'll be arguing across points or anything like that. So I'm not really. Oh, this is very important. Yeah. Yeah, and this is very important.
2 minutes.
Okay, one thing I want you to keep in mind: absence of an answer is not the answer for something else. That's very important. I'm going to repeat that. Absence of an answer. Because you cannot answer something, and this is very important, because you cannot answer something, in no way is an indication that someone else does not have a legitimate answer for it. What that's called projection. That's saying because I don't have a certain answer, because I don't know an answer to a certain question, therefore you don't know, therefore you don't know, and therefore you don't know. That's unfair. It's unfair to anybody who may have put in the time and work to actually be able to contribute to the dialogue an exact answer that can be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, and that is self-evident and needs no help. Lastly, but not least, we touched on the lenses, or supposed lenses that Van Sertima referenced, that was attested to by the Russian scientists. You say that you said that all of the evidence is in, and telescopes do not figure into it. And so this is what I would respond to with that. It's two things. Number one, I want black people to be very cognizant of something. This is very important. And I want everybody to hear me on this. It's very important. Number one, there's a book you should read. I want everybody to write this name down. It's called The Rape of Egypt. It's either The Rape of Egypt or The Rape of the Nile Valley. The reason that is important is because people do not understand the direct correlation to how 18th century Europe became scientific just as Egypt was being raped by the French with Napoleon and the scientists. Which means out of nowhere, Europe came up with telescopes. Out of nowhere, Europe came up with a whole lot of things that it did not have prior to its raping Egypt. So to presume that telescopes were not in Egypt just because they cannot be found there today would be false, because we do not know all of what was taken out of Egypt. And last but not least, what you need most to create telescopes is glass. What is glass made out of? Sand. I don't think anybody thinks that Egypt has a shortage of sand. Your play, my brother.
He just said.
That's beautiful.
He just said.
That's beautiful.
We
Go ahead,
don't
brother.
know.
Yeah.
We don't know. Just because Egypt this, we don't know that. Which leaves room for possibility, which is in court, we call speculation. If I'm in court and say objection, it's either going to be overturned, right, or overruled, or sustained. It's going to be overruled or sustained. I mean, that's speculation, and that leaves room for possibilities. You said in the debate, if you don't have the answer to something, it doesn't mean that you don't know, and you don't know, and you don't know. And that's absolutely true. But when you're having the debate with Polite, if you don't know, Polite's going to win. That's what this is about.
Okay.
You are representing everybody that stands on the same platform of consciousness in terms of this argument.
Yes.
So it is your obligation, morally and intellectually, to have an answer to the best of your ability. And if you don't,
I never said I would.
if you don't,
Right.
let's get to it now.
No,
If you don't, if you do not have an
married
answer,
to this guy.
you can press that. You can press that. It ain't moving. If you don't, time man, moderate. Alright. If you don't have an answer to it,
They got it in that 1 minute early.
it's all good because he got an extra minute off.
Oh, you're right.
I definitely paid attention. I definitely know I was right. Debate. If you don't have an answer to something, doesn't mean that you don't know when you don't know. You don't know. And that is fair to the audience. That's trying to milk the audience. Yeah, that don't mean I don't know. That's what you're trying to do to the audience. Yeah, we might know. Yeah. Nah, that's what we not going to let him get away with. Is if you don't know.
I love this, brother.
You have failed to support the people that support you. Because when I stand up and talk about extraterrestrials and their influence and their intervention and the creation of man, I represent the whole community at that time. Whether they like it or not, I am your representative. You should have voted someone else in my place, but I'm here today.
Right.
There's a negative connotation around the word. I'm not going to go to the first point. And I'm going to stop this argument because we went back and forth on it. Again with these damn 6 words that were generated by his indecisiveness, his inability to suggest that I'm either pro or con. I'm not going to say the extraterrestrials didn't come. So he says, I can say they did not or did not visit. Then he says, but that has nothing to do with the Nile Valley culture and all this other stuff. Let me just get to the point. He's trying to assert himself as having a strong conviction in the argument. Yet he's still confirming that he said, I'm not going to say this and I'm not going to say that. He then goes to say, I made no statement that I have to prove in the future. That's what he says. He said, I made no statement that I have to prove in the future. And he's proud of that statement. He's proud that he told you, I made no statement I'm going to have to prove in the future. Now, this is supposed to be a preliminary for a debate. We're supposed to prepare people for a debate. We put some things on the table. We get an idea of each other's argument. But idealistically, the goal is to bring the best thing we have to offer to the debate. If he does not eventually say something he's going to have to prove when he comes to the debate, then everybody will only be coming to hear my side. And that's normally the case. I'm trying to switch the game this time. Alright? So we're going to go to suggestion. He put a negative connotation around the word suggest. And he's talking about how, suggestion is kind of like religion now. No. Suggestion is what's used to pyramid emphasis. It establishes credibility in the argument. Sometimes it's unfair the way people pyramid emphasis. So for instance, I might have to establish you as a murderer. And you may have projected.
I'm going to murder your argument.
You may have projected that you are other than a murderer. So what I would then do is pyramid emphasis. I may ask someone, did you see him beat his wife? Yes, I did see it. I may ask another, did you ever hear him say, I could kill you in a violent fashion when he was angry? Yes, I did hear him say that. If he projected that he is this guy that grows flowers and all he does is eat sunflower seeds.
I do. Yes, good.
And pumpkin seeds.
That's true.
Then it's my job to start pyramiding emphasis. Not for the purposes of accumulating mass speculation, but to establish enough credibility for the argument that when I bring in the final punchline, it will resonate with the people and I could thereby reciprocate everything that you was trying to project. So suggestion is fundamental to the premises of debate. I must suggest to establish credibility. So I want people to understand how I function when I do my debates. There will be a lot of suggestions, but predicated upon factual premises. To which end, when I come with the final blow, you ever see somebody block? Like, you ever seen a child block a blow from the parent and their whole body still fall on the floor? That's what it's going to be like. You can block all you want, but your whole body going to come crashing down. This is a grown man. When you get hit, it ain't always true that if you put up a block, you stop the impact. You can wear a bulletproof vest and still get knocked unconscious. So I want you to remember that. And you can wear a bulletproof vest and I still aim for your head. You got to remember that. Okay? Don't be in a fight and say, oh, how you can pull the glass bottle out the garbage can. I heard this before on somebody. I still whopped that nigga in his head.
That's right.
What do you mean? I only paused because it was so stupid. But when I came back to my senses, I still cracked that bottle over his head. Don't tell me I ain't got the right to pull out a glass bottle when we in a fight. So I'm going to make my suggestions. Who created the stories of creation, he asks. Who created the stories of creation?
I asked that?
Who's the one responsible for creating the stories? Where did the story come from? Did it come from the slave master?
Okay.
Just want to make sure I'm not embellishing.
No, I didn't say the story of creation. I said who's responsible for the story of the aliens intervening in Nile Valley civilization. Who's responsible for creating that story?
No problem.
That's what I'm talking
Same thing I'm trying to convey.
Okay.
Who's responsible for these stories? I don't subscribe to the maelstrom of the black conscious community. When all else fails, our coping mechanism is it's the white man. Now, I'm not saying that this wholeheartedly is your goal or your agenda. What I am going to say is, every time I have the people that I'm debating into a bind, they resort to, so where are we getting the information from? Or who came up with this idea? Huh? In this particular case, it wouldn't matter to me who came up with the idea. In this debate, in all debates, the question is if the information is true. So that's a straw man argument. So whether we find out at the debate, you see, white people are the ones that came up with this story first. Then guess what's going to happen? You may cater to the lower nature and intellectuality of those people in the crowd that have been beaten by police over the head, who have been racially profiled, who ACS has taken their children, and they may say, yeah, white people came up with this first, therefore it's a lie. But this doesn't mean that it's true. He's just using your insecurities and your emotions as prey to win the argument. It doesn't matter if the white man is the one that created the story or not. What matters is if it's true. And I'm going to tell you, the white man is taking the racism to the stars. Because he knows by the time we realize who our gods are, who our deities are, by the time we realize who are the heavenly hosts and what it means represents to this extraterrestrial doctrine, he would have already imposed himself and made himself the extraterrestrial as we're coming into a new paradigm and people are waking up and realizing religion doesn't have all the answers. And we might be embarking upon something that does. So he is finding his place snug in there. That's another thing. So I don't want to use this argument of who's the one that came up with it, because you yourself will quote Swallow the Lubitz to me, who may be the progeny of the slave masters in terms of the lineage is concerned, but it never stops you from quoting Swallow the Lubitz to me and tell me to read some of his books. Okay? You will tell me about the Elephantine Papyrus. You will tell me about her Baka historical novel. You will tell me about Symbolic or Symbolique. Ain't no black people wrote those. But you suggest to me, Polite, I think you should read this. And at that point, it's not a question over them being the progeny or blood descendancy of people that may have. I asked the question, was God on the planet when he created the planet? And before we go, God is a religious word. Was deity or Neter or Netert or Neteru by any name? What name a deity in Egypt? Name the first one. Name the only one. Name the superior one. Name the head of the Enad, the Sedjet, the Ogdog, however you want to call it. Whoever created everybody else. Who was they on the planet when they created the planet, or were they outside the planet? Or do none of these stories even exist? Is this all metaphorical? Are the Egyptian stories all metaphorical? And if we just break it down to air, and no, this means water, and this means moisture. Did moisture exist outside the planet before the planet existed? Was air facilitated outside the planet before the planet existed? I don't know which way you want to break down the ancient Egyptian deities. But one thing we're going to have to take into consideration is that they speak a whole lot about sentient beings, flesh and blood beings. What was the pharaoh, the Nefertiti, trying to become? Who was he trying to be on planet Earth? In the flesh, according to Egyptian doctrine. Who was he supposed to represent? Was he not a conduit to God? Or from God? Was he not the intercessor or a medium to which men can exchange or get their value systems? I still got an extra minute. For the creator, I don't know. I can't speak for him. But I know he's going to have to explain the Egyptian doctrine to us. So I have the right to dissect it. I'm going to dissect the Egyptian doctrine. I'm going to dissect it. I want him to give us his evaluation of what those gods are. Because you're right. You didn't give us nothing to have to hold you to when it's time to go to the debate. You're absolutely right. And you don't feel that you don't have a strong conviction, even though you still say, I'm not going to say that extraterrestrials didn't come to the planet, and I'm not going to say that extraterrestrials did. But I have a stance. Pick one, nigga. Is it too late to say nigga?
Yeah.
It's always too late to say nigga.
Pick one. We gonna do it for breakfast.
Okay,
Make
before
my
I go
teeth
to
white.
Shaka right quick, I want to ask you, Polite. When you talk about the extraterrestrials,
I rest
are
my
you
case.
saying that I want you to describe these
Oh, you
things
want
that
me
you're
sound
talking
crazy?
about? No, I mean,
Go ahead,
what
go
do you mean by extraterrestrials? Or how do they look? Or what
They
do
can look like rocks. Because
So-
a rock can be extraterrestrial.
So rocks build the pyramids, you're saying?
They use rocks to build pyramids.
No,
But,
no, that's
I'm
not what I
gonna go
said.
specifically.
Yes.
I don't want to be limited to rocks. You can say Polite said rocks build pyramids.
Right,
The Hebrews
right.
gonna
You
go
already
crazy
know.
and say, "Yeah, we
Yeah,
told
you
you he's
know.
crazy."
Hebrew rocks.
That's right.
No, what I'm
But,
saying is when you talk about extraterrestrials, what are you saying? Like, how
In
do they
every
look?
capacity.
Can you describe it?
Oh yeah, I can describe it.
Go ahead.
They look like me.
Okay.
Some of them. They look just like me. I'm extraterrestrial. See, that's gonna be a difficult thing to disprove.
All right, my brother Shaka, you on, brother?
Okie dokie. Thank you very much. That was a very lively discourse and explication you gave, my brother.
Thank you, my brother.
The first thing, and I'm probably going to address this. Well, first, for some reason he keeps addressing my lack of a stance on the alien issue. I think that being neutral on the subject, in other words, he's trying to make it appear as if I'm not committing myself to anything simply because I won't answer in the affirmative or in the negative something about which I have no conclusive evidence. Now, to me, someone who does something like that, I call them a charlatan. Somebody who gives you an answer in the affirmative or in the negative concerning something about which they have no conclusive evidence is being, in spite of themselves, they're being dishonest because they don't know. And so I think the most honest thing that you can do is when you don't know something is to say, I don't know. So therefore, I think somebody who tells you that they know when in fact they don't. See, let me share something with you. The success to telling a lie. I want to share this, very important. The success to telling a lie is that the first person you must convince of the lie is yourself. That's the first person you must convince of the lie. Once you have successfully convinced yourself of the lie, when you tell that lie to other people, you are no longer lying in your own self. You are now telling the truth. This is how many truths end up in our midst, because people have lied to themselves by engaging in beliefs, misconstruing them as facts, selling them to themselves first as facts, and then selling them to you. And so I would like to believe that this is what's going on here with respect to the whole extraterrestrial thing. I'm going to say it one last time, and I think after that, because he said you can once replay the tape. I have taken a very definite stance that I do not know one way or the other whether or not extraterrestrials in the form of sentient beings have ever visited this planet or have interfered in African civilization. Or have just ever interfered with humanity, period. I have taken a stance that Nile Valley civilization, its structures, its edifices, its culture, its cosmology and cosmogony was self-produced, self-created, and evolved within the matrix of those people. Now, if we are going to go semantically and say, well, yeah, they were very involved with the sun, yes, they were very involved with the stars, and all of these things are extraterrestrial, then yes, of course, there was extraterrestrial influence. There was extraterrestrial subscription on their own part. Okay? If we are talking about extraterrestrial in that sense, I'm not talking about extraterrestrial in that sense. I am talking about extraterrestrial in the sense of sentient beings alone. No A, no B, no C. I mean, no B, no C, no D. Strictly A. Sentient beings. And so, based on that, no. with respect to, I said it's very important to touch on who is the source. You have to, for myself, you would have to document the source of who came up with the idea that the pyramids or anything in in black civilization was built by aliens. Who is the father of that worldview? Who was the first person to articulate that position? If it was somebody who was not an African, if it was somebody who was not well versed in African culture and African history, if it was somebody who was not well versed in anthropology, archaeology, so on and so on, if it was somebody who was not respected by their peers in their own field, be it those in the minority or those in the majority. In other words, if it was a solo voice who had a fringe theory, who was this person? I can give you perhaps one or two names. The first name that comes to mind is Eric von Daniken, who wrote a book called, if I remember correctly, either Chariots of the Gods or Fingerprints of the Gods. I forget the name of the book. Chariots of the Gods. Eric von Daniken. This is a European, and I don't know much about him. He was not a real scientist in any real sense of the word, and to the best of my knowledge, Eric von Daniken was one of the first big proponents of this, which means that the idea of aliens building or extraterrestrials building these edifices is a relatively new one. It's relatively brand new. It's not that old. The second person, of course, is going to be Zecharia Sitchin. You know that name has to come up without question. And he's been so discredited by his own, he has no peers because there's nobody in the scientific community that would consider him an actual archaeologist, anthropologist, or even a Mesopotamianologist. Most of them say he doesn't know what he's talking about. So I have to take the word of the experts on that. But source is very important. It's very, very important. Why is source important? He said that I recommended that he read some certain white writers. Yes, I did recommend that he read certain white writers. I myself read certain white writers. But what is very important? Very important when you're choosing an author. When people go to court, since he wants to reference courts as often as he does, and I have no problem with that, because I think we should think in those terms. I think this is the environment for it. When you go to court, what is the primary factor that is being sought out to solve any and every crime?
Evidence.
It starts, no, it's not evidence. The primary factor is motive. What is the motive? So you can have evidence, but if it doesn't add up with the motive, then you only have half a case. What you need first and foremost to be prevalent is motive. When you are reading authors, your first question should be is, what is the motive of the author? When I have recommended white writers to him, such as Schwaller de Lubitz, such as Beaker Reed, such as other writers who have written on ancient Egypt who may not have been African. There are a number of white writers who I would read on ancient Egypt who are not African. I think they're competent with the subject matter. But I also understand their motive. You have to know something about the author. You understand what I'm saying? It's very important. So yeah, I have no problem with recommending white writers when their motive is clear, when they are writing objectively. When they are writing objectively and when their writings can be substantiated by the evidence that has already been brought to bear on the subject matter. Therefore, we're not reading this thing in solo, or in either in situ or in solo. Okay, so that's number whatever we're up to. He used the term something about how the white people are going out into space, colonizing they're taking racism to space, and that many of us might, here goes that word again, might not be ready for what, here he uses it again, for what we might be embarking upon. What are these things? This leads to the third word he continually uses, suggestive. So you got might, leading to equaling, summing up to suggestive. So again, his whole thing is perpetrated upon belief. For me, I don't do belief. I prefer facts. Okay? Schwaller de Lubitz, again, motive. He said that I'm going to have to explicate and discourse upon Egyptian philosophy. although I did recommend a number of books on ancient Egypt, unfortunately for my brother in this particular debate, there are quite a number of books that I didn't recommend.
I want to ask you, Shaka, where do you suppose we come from? Where do we come from? Where do you come from? I don't want to hear nothing silly like, oh, I come from my mother. We all do.
Don't give him enough
Where
time
do we come from?
for us not to realize he has to pause for
No,
a
first
minute.
of all, hold on. First of all, you cannot characterize any answer as silly if I believe it's a legitimate answer.
Yeah.
That's number one. Okay.
Okay.
Number two, I tell my son or any person that when you ask me a question, the best that he said I had a moral and an intellectual obligation to answer something. I don't recall exactly what it was, but what I can say is this: what you do have a moral and intellectual obligation to do is to answer someone honestly, not because it sounds good, not because you think it's what somebody wants to hear, because it's what you think they need to hear. You need to tell the truth. Why? Because from my perspective, from my cosmology, because I subscribe to the worldview of ancient Egypt. And the greatest thing that you could do in ancient Egypt, there was nothing, literally nothing greater than speaking truth. Ma'at. Nothing greater than that. Does not exist. Non-existent. And so the greatest thing that I can do when I speak to any woman, they ask me any question about anything, is to speak truthfully. Now when you ask me where we come from, the most truthful thing that I can tell you is that I came from my mother and my father. And the most truthful thing that I can tell you is that they came from their mother and their father. And I will tell you something. If you ask Dr. Joseph Ben Yakinen, he's going to give you the exact same answer. Because he continually takes us to task for miscontextualizing sex and the role that it actually played in our ancestry, which is why you get the silly Hebrews laughing when they see iptophalic symbols in ancient Egypt and they see the phalluses and all that other stuff. It's because they're uncomfortable with sex. Our ancestors were not uncomfortable with sex. They understood the divinity of it. They understood that this was how, look, this was the source of all math. Sex is the only thing that exists where addition is taking place, multiplication is taking place, subtraction is taking place, division is taking place. All math is present with sex. It is the only phenomenon in existence where all math is present. All things, like the ancient Egyptians would have said, all things in the dark are brought to light with sex. All things. Not some all things.
Okay, brother, I heard that right there, but that's still not telling me where we come from, because I could say, yeah, I come from my mother. My mother come from her mother.
Yes.
Her mother come, but where did we come from? Because we was not always here.
Why not?
You had dinosaurs here before us.
Why not?
You had animals here before us. What I'm saying to you, brother, is where did we come from? And that's the only answer you can give me, is that we come from our mother, and my mother comes from her mother, and her father. I understand that. Now I'm gonna ask you that same question and see if you can give me a different answer, or if you may agree with that.
Let me augment
Brother
that
Polite.
before you. Let me just augment very quickly.
Yeah,
This. I have my own personal beliefs with respect to something. I don't always deal with beliefs. I very rarely discuss my beliefs. Why? Because I believe if you can't prove it, it's not worth anything. It doesn't have any real value. It only has value to you. So what I will do is I will share with you my belief on the subject matter. And whatever value it has for you, it has. Whatever it doesn't, it doesn't. My personal belief is that there was never a time when we were not. And that we have always been here and that we always will be. That is my own personal belief. Much of the science, according to Western science, says otherwise. What I try to do is I try to find the balance between my own personal belief and what the science says. I also believe that there are some things, as they also used to say in ancient Egypt. You see, one of the mistakes that we make is that we like to pretend that we have an answer for everything. Our ancestors were not so presumptuous. They repeatedly said, we cannot know everything. So there's going to be some questions that you will never have the answer to. You understand? I have my beliefs that we have always been here, we always will be. With respect on a cosmological level, I know that all life on this planet, it only exists because of Ray. Because of nature Ray. Ra. What you want to call Ra, I say Ray. That is the only reason we are here because of Ray, who we see in the sky. Without Ray, none of these other planets in our solar system exist. No life on this planet exists. So for me, that is the deity. And the only deity that can possibly precede Ray would be Noon. That is it.
So were we here before the dinosaurs or at the same time as the dinosaurs?
I would say I'm really on that question. I'm honestly out to lunch. I know what the science says. The science says that the dinosaurs preceded. Dinosaurs. They say that the dinosaurs, because you have to understand, you always have to take into consideration that we have been spoon-fed so much crap from these people that you have to begin to develop flags. In other words, flags have to begin to go up so that you begin to say, okay, you know what? I hear you. To the Western science, euphemism for white scientists, you have to begin to say, I hear you. I hear what you have to say. I'm looking at the evidence. I'll come to my own conclusion. And thank you very much.
Okay.
Because I'm going to consider things that you will never consider. Why? Because you're not hardwired to consider them that way.
All right, I'm going to move on to Polite.
Okay.
And something is starting to hit me right now, and I'm starting to sling towards Polite end on this. When he talk about the extraterrestrials.
Sure.
When I asked the question, and you said, we have always been here.
Yes. That's my belief.
I agree. I'm not dealing with belief. Right. I agree with you. Not in this type of form.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Everything that exists outside of us, we know exists within the human body.
I agree.
So we was not always in this form and in this shape, but we was here. You see what I'm saying? So now I'm starting to see
that's why
what the fuck Polite is talking about.
I'm extraterrestrial. You looking at
you know that shit is, it might sound spooky to some people out there, but we had to come.
But can I address that real fast? Can I address that real fast?
I want you to address it, but then I'm going.
Okay, no problem. Let me address that real fast. Let me just say this. Your basic arguments are this. You just had Bill the Science Guy, Bill Nye the Science Guy, debate this guy. You see it all over YouTube. yeah. He just debated this guy. He's also a scholar on creationism versus evolution. Basically, you're talking about Darwinism and evolution. Okay. Look, at the end of the day, I would say that what the creationists believe is that we were designed intelligently because evolution does not exist. We did not come from the monkeys. We did not come from a common ancestor. See, most people like to think that Darwinism says we came from monkeys. Darwinism does not say that. Darwinism says that the chimpanzees and the primates sprang from a common ancestor. That's what it says. That's what Darwinism says. I'm out to lunch on that. Okay? I'm out to lunch on that because I can't prove it one way or the other. I've heard scientists on both ends come up with very plausible arguments. But at the end of the day, I would say that if we have always been here, I believe we've always been here in this form. I have no reason to see why we haven't been. Why? Because when I look at trees and when I look at the earth around me, I'm not saying that change does not take place. I know sometimes it's cataclysmic. I understand that sometimes it's over eons. But at the end of the day, one of the beauties of this world is the consistency. There's a certain consistency and order. We call it Mayat. And because of that, when you look at us, I believe that we are extensions and expressions of Ma'at and a part of that order. And so we've always been here. And yes, in this form.
Because I just voiced my opinion.
Yeah.
They already saying, see, and that's why I got to be quiet.
What?
They already saying Saw is being biased. Because I voiced it.
Nah, he's getting he's excited about the information.
Oh man, I'm not biased. Both of these brothers is right here. I mean, let's go with you.
Really given any information.
I want to ask you the same question.
Okay.
Where do you suppose we come from?
I like that word, suppose.
There you go.
Yes,
that was very good.
I like that. And to just thrust a stronger conviction there, I'm going to remove suppose because of how my opponent would suggest suppose means. So we will not deal with the element of suppose. This is what I'm going to tell you. It's a multifaceted answer. And this is not a means to evade the answer. I have a diversity of explanations that do not allude to confusion, more rather deals with at what stage of creation you want to tack this situation onto. And what I mean by that is there's a sexual premise where we can ask, where does the sperm come from? And the cerebral spinal fluid comes from the cerebellum or the brain, the baby brain, down the spine. If we will it into physical manifestation in the form of ejaculation, then in turn there's fluids that are made. But then the question is, where did that life spark from? And then we can now start talking about the pineal gland and how the animation takes place and how the woman is breathing in everything from the atmosphere to create the components to make the baby. So there's one element where we will have to deal with a brand of what people will call metaphysics. I don't want to play on the word meta.
I like the way you
physical.
That was articulated so well. I gotta shake your hand. I really
because we know that there's a deeper lying root to metaphysical, but for sake of comprehension, there would be a balance of physical to metaphysical ratio. So what I would suggest we talk about in this particular case, I'll give you one facet of a multifaceted answer, because once we say creation, we can say how human beings interface and create, because that's magical in itself. And when I say magical, I'm talking in the realm of science. It's magical in itself how two human beings could create a child seemingly from nowhere. And actually would have to be no thing.
And we're not the only ones. Dolphins, whales, everybody else.
It would have to be no thing before it comes something. And when I say some, I don't mean S-O-M-E. I say, like Dr. York taught us, S-U-M.
But when you say no thing, what do you mean? No thing, what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean the subatomic realm versus the elementals. Mm-hmm. If hydrogen was to lose one electron out of its valence, it would become a subatomic energy. Maybe a quark, a biaperture, a Zeti, or what have you. Okay, then we'd be dealing with the lepton family of particles. In which case we would be dealing with soft, subtly organized energy fields. These are energies that don't register to the naked eye, can only be speculated upon until you have the right type of technology to know that it even exists. Sometimes it's felt but not appreciated because it can't be used or identified through any form of demonstration up into a certain extent of the human experience. So what happens is you have the subtle organized energy fields that precipitated from the lepton family of particles that in turn will become your photons, your quarks, your biapertures, your
How does that relate to the extraterrestrials?
Your zelis. Well, I'm answering his question about creation first.
Okay.
And in turn, they work their way into just that one electron on hydrogen. And if another electron should come into the first valence of that atom, because the first valence can only hold 2 electrons, the next valence has accommodations for 8. And all other valences have accommodations for 8. The only other adjustment that can be made is through ionic bonding or covalent bonding when there's a polygyny taking place amongst the elementals or something is being